Rachel Hurley. I'm based at the Norwegian Institute for Water Research, also known as NIVA, and I'm the Deputy Coordinator and a work package leader within the project PAPILLONS. That stands for Plastic in Agricultural Production, Impacts, Life Cycles and Long-Term Sustainability. So this is maybe a slightly different topic than we've had mostly today. We're sort of moving away from focusing solely on kind of humans and this toxicology, and looking a little bit broader at agriculture as a more general topic. So something a little bit different now we're coming to the latter stage of the day. So a little bit about the frame of the project. We started in June last year, and it's a 4-year project. So actually the end of this month marks the end of year 1, and I will talk a little bit about the progress that we've made so far in the project as I talk through kind of the planned activities. We're composed of 20 partners across 12 countries, 11 of those in Europe and then 1 in China as well. And I'll show the partners in the final screen as well so you can see those. And we were able actually, when we were constructing this consortium, to gather actually some really excellent groups that have been publishing previously on the topics of plastics and agriculture. So it's a really nice consortium actually. We're funded under the topic related to emerging challenges in soil management, and that was particularly under this category B about the use of plastic in agriculture. And I can also mention that we have a sister project called Minagris, coordinated by Wageningen University, who were also funded in that same call at the same time scale. And we collaborate with them, work quite closely with them, and avoid kind of duplicating efforts. And it's actually quite nice to have this kind of second consortium that are doing similar things, and we can sort of talk about the shared challenges and address kind of a wider range of research questions between us. And yeah, it's NIVA that coordinate this, and we have some few members from NIVA also in this room. We've got the coordinator of the project and the project manager sat at the back, and we also have our work package related to dissemination and communication based at Farm Europe here in Brussels. He's also here as well, so you can speak to them in the break if you would like to hear more information about the project. So just to set kind of the scene, the context for the PAPILLONS project. Agricultural plastics are used quite widely. About 3 to 4 million tonnes of plastics are currently in use at any sort of given time in Europe, and about 1 million tonnes of this is generated as waste each year. There are many different applications of this agricultural plastic. The most dominant is thin films that are used as protected cultivation systems. So that's your mulching films, low tunnel systems, greenhouse systems. But there are other applications, for example, plastic used in irrigation systems, plastic to wrap silage, and also sort of increasingly emerging, there's this polymeric encapsulation of seeds, and also controlled or slow-release fertilisers that are also used in some forms of agriculture, forestry, horticulture, that sort of thing. So all of this plastic is in use, and obviously this is a plastic application that comes pretty close in direct contact to the environment. These are deployed in fields, in agricultural systems. So unlike other products that kind of need to go through use and then end of life and then potentially enter the environment as mismanaged waste, this product obviously can also follow that stream, but is also deployed in the environment and has the potential to also introduce plastic residues during the use as it's sort of placed out on the field, removed from the field. These plastics can form these residues due to degradation, so just the mechanical pressure of placing them into the field, the exposure to the environment, so changing weather, temperature, all of the UV degradation. And we already see evidence for these plastic residues entering soils from these applications. So this is something that's already been observed in the environment. There's also emerging use of biodegradable polymers for agricultural plastics. And so these are actually intentionally ploughed into soils. So when used as mulching films, to remove the need to kind of retrieve these plastics after use, they are just ploughed into the soil after use. And so these are certified for soil environments with given conditions. It's not yet clear how applicable that is to kind of the full range of environments that these are used in. and also what happens during this biodegradation. So even in the environments that this is certified for over the right timescale, what is actually happening in that sort of time frame. And on top of that, these plastics may also release additives as they degrade. These are kind of flexible, thin films. There are additives to kind of facilitate that functionality. And we don't know that much about what happens, how much of this enters the environment and how much of this then is transformed, enters the soils, is potentially taken up by plants or organisms, or transferred to other parts of the environment. So we're starting to see already some studies that document effects in terms of the soil environment. So plastic residues can affect soil properties, for example, the water holding capacity, sort of abiotic soil properties, but also microbial community structure and functioning. Soil organisms, earthworms, things like that, they can interact with micro nanoplastics, and they are ingested and have documented effects on multiple endpoints. And we also have some studies now showing that the plants may take up in particular the nanoplastic particles, which could lead to a range of potential effects. But when reviewing the literature, what is immediately quite apparent is that there is a lot of uncertainty, and that's obviously something that we've heard a lot today already. So when we talk about effects, these aren't always necessarily negative effects. Sometimes there are also positive effects, and many studies show that there are no effects at all with certain particle types and certain exposure conditions. So there's still a lot of unanswered questions that need to be addressed in terms of this topic. But I mean, these plastics are used for a reason. They have substantial benefits. They are kind of fundamental to food security. They can, for example, extend growing seasons. They can reduce the need for the use of pesticides, herbicides, these sorts of things. They can increase agricultural production. And so we need to come up with a way that we can balance the use of these plastics against the potential negative impacts on the plastic residues themselves. When we talk about non-degradable plastics, if these enter the soil, we've already seen that this is starting to occur. It's very difficult, essentially impossible in a meaningful way to retrieve these once they are in these soil matrices. So this is something that we need to understand what sort of impact this could have, and especially if they accumulate over time, whether they could reach, for example, concentrations where we start to see measurable impacts on soil properties and organisms in the environment in sort of real world context. So we need to balance all of the benefits of the agricultural plastics against the potential negative impacts and ensure that we can have a situation where we can benefit from these products today, but also in the future. So bringing this back to the context of the Papillon project, the primary objective of the project is to fill some of these many knowledge gaps that I've already identified related to the sources, the behaviour, and the long-term ecological and socio-economic impacts of micro nanoplastics derived from agricultural plastics. And we also want to provide the scientific background to enable policy, agricultural and industrial innovation towards sustainable farm production systems. This gives a bit of a frame of the project as well and how we will be doing this. So we'll be kind of articulating tasks from the farm scale and also looking at several aspects on the field scale. So we're addressing things that are across sort of pan-European all the way down to sort of microscopic level in the soil. So we're addressing a significant number of scales in this project. How this is sort of organised practically, we have 4 main research work packages and then a work package dedicated to communication and dissemination. I will go through these individually in the next few slides, but I also want to mention that we have these cross-cutting themes as well, which kind of intersect across the project and relate to all of these work packages and bring together the activities that are performed in the different work packages. And I will also go through these on the next slide. So the first cross-cutting theme is the multi-actor approach. This is something that we've already been setting up in the first year of the project. So we've already been successful in establishing a large network of stakeholders covering many different sectors. And we've already invited these stakeholders to participate in shaping the research agenda within Papillon. So for example, we have provided proposals for some specific activities that we're running in the project to relevant stakeholders and requested comments back to help sort of frame the parameters of those experiments. And we're also hosting two times a year these stakeholder forum events where we invite stakeholders to present their perspective on this matter, and we also then present kind of updates on the project. And that's something that we'd be doing in collaboration with Minagris as well, the sister project. The second cross-cutting theme is related to method optimization and validation. I mean, we've already heard today that this is a very important topic. You've already described several quite complex matrices. Soil is very much part of that community and helpfully complex with many different kind of types and forms of organic material that you need to remove or reduce before you're able to effectively analyse your microplastic particles. And this is something that we have been focusing on in the first year of the project, coming up with a suite of different methods that we can apply to address the different research questions that we would like to answer in the Papillon project. Also in this cross-cutting theme is reference materials, obviously also a popular topic today. Yeah, we are also very much participating in the kind of adventure that is trying to generate sufficient volumes of well-characterised particles that address the research needs. That's something that's ongoing, and we've made some good progress. But some of the scales of our experiments demand us to generate several tens of kilograms of reference materials. So yeah, as you can imagine, that is certainly a fun task that we are enjoying at the moment. But we are making some very good progress with that, with different types of agricultural plastics that we're able to generate into small particles. And as part of that, we're also producing carbon-14 labelled nanoplastics as well to feed some specific nano studies in the planned activity. And then finally, the third cross-cutting theme are these integrated multi-prong studies. So these are large experiments that we run across all of the research work packages. They start with a survey of European soils. So these are real farms that use agricultural plastics and other forms of kind of plastic inputs to agricultural soils. And so we want to map kind of the scales of contamination and already begin to link this to things such as biodiversity. So we want to see what the sort of picture, what the baseline is across Europe today. We also have some large field plot experiments. These are being set up kind of as we speak. They are running in Spain, Germany and Finland to try and cover some of the different biogeographic regions in Europe. And then we also have these mesocosm experiments. So we have soil column mesocosms in Amsterdam, and then we also have some mesocosms in Germany for some focused nano experiments as well. So just going quickly through the different work packages now. So work package 1 is related to micro nanoplastic properties and sources to farm soils. The tasks in this work package are about characterising the major types of agricultural plastics that are used in Europe and trying to understand kind of their chemical composition, their main additives, their different functionalities. There will be also some work investigating how these agricultural plastics degrade over time and how the sort of mechanisms behind the fragmentation and the generation of micro nanoplastics under field conditions. So we can understand when are the thresholds, when do these products start to generate micro nanoplastics when they're actually used in the environment. And this will follow through to the creation of a digital atlas of agricultural plastic use in Europe, so combining information about where these products are used with some environmental data and the investigation of the fragmentation to work out where there could potentially be hotspots of micro nanoplastic release. And then finally, the production of micro nanoplastic reference materials is housed within this work package predominantly. Work package 2 is related to the behaviour and transport of micro nanoplastics. So the spatial survey that I mentioned in cross-cutting theme 3, the soil sampling and the microplastic analysis as part of that is housed in this work package. We will then be drilling down into the fate and transport of micro nanoplastics in the mesocosm and the field plot experiments, and also a series of lab experiments to kind of really pinpoint some of the important mechanisms underpinning the fate, the transport, the behaviour of these particles in soils. And we'll also be looking at this for plastic additives as well, so how plastic additives potentially are released from these particles and how these then transport through the soil, how they could potentially be transferred to connected aquatic environments. And then the final part of this work package is related to the uptake of micro and nanoplastics and plastic additives by soil organisms and plants. And that leads into the work package 2 and 3, where we start to look at the ecological effects of these particles. So work package 3 is focusing on organisms. There's the spatial survey where we start to look into the biodiversity of soil fauna, and we'll also look at microbial diversity as well across Europe. And then we will be assessing the impact of micro and nanoplastic on soil properties, soil fauna, and soil microorganism communities across, again, the mesocosm experiments, the field plot experiments, and a series of lab experiments that will also include some long-term multi-generational single-species tests as well. And finally, we will also be looking at the impact of plastic additives in these same experiments. Work package 4 is related to production and sustainability impacts. So this is when we're starting to look at the plants themselves. So there'll be assessment of the impact of micro and nanoplastics on plant cells. So we have some plant cell cultures for in vitro experiments. We also have some lab experiments with hydroponic systems. We'll also be looking at the impact of these particles and also plastic additives in the mesocosm experiments, the field plot experiments again as well. And then we will be ending this work package with an investigation into the socio-economic sustainability of the use of agricultural plastics using a cost-benefit analysis. So that will be drawing upon all of the results from all of the work packages to try and understand where is kind of the thresholds of safe use of these plastic products. And so kind of bringing this back to sort of the theme of the workshop today, Papillons is not directly addressing kind of human exposure or human health, any of these topics, but there are still some results that will be of interest to people in the room today. So we will be investigating the uptake of micro nanoplastics and plastic additives by crops. So this obviously poses a potential human exposure route. This has not really been elaborated in great detail so far for agricultural plastics, so we hope to address some of the research questions there. And we also will be looking throughout the project into this topic of biodegradable plastics. So we'll be testing within the context of the micro nanoplastics these biodegradable polymers. So there's some interesting questions there about how they could potentially release plastic additives, or the sort of residues of the biodegradation could be taken up by plants and organisms. Just to sort of finish up talking about Papillon now, if you would like more information, you can check out the website and also our social media channels. And I'd also like to say that we have regular stakeholder forum meetings that you're very welcome to attend. So you can just get in touch and we can add you to the contact list for that. And if you have interesting things that you would like to present that are of relevance to this topic, then that's something that we could talk about for future events. I'll also just talk just the last couple of slides on some projects that couldn't be here today. These are also coordinated by NEVA. The first is another Horizon 2020 project, a coordination and support action called EuroQ-Charm. And this might be relevant to people in the room today. We've been talking about optimizing methods, validating methods, coming up with harmonized approaches, standardized definitions. And that's something that is definitely going to be covered in this EuroQ-Charm project, at least under the context of the environment and monitoring environmental pollution. But I think there will be lots of relevant aspects that then can be drawn into some of these other projects where other things are also being addressed. So you can also access their website if you would like more information about that, and feel free to get in touch with them. And then there's also another project that I will just finish on here. We've already seen diagrams like this today. So this is plastic waste generation over time, and then alongside there is this steep increase in the publication of scientific articles addressing plastic pollution. And obviously in the last years where we've been seeing this huge effort, there have been some advances, but there's also been a lot of noise, and it's not always easy to draw conclusions. And also there is then the possibility for kind of unconsolidated narratives to emerge. So the International Knowledge Hub Against Plastic Pollution, or ICAP, has been developed to kind of address this. And it comprises a community of independent researchers, and it's articulated through a knowledge hub to try and bring together, sort of collate and then critically analyse and disseminate knowledge related to plastic pollution under 3 themes: environment, society and technology. And these ICAP has already been partnering with several large organisations, including UN Habitat, the German Institute for International Cooperation, and also the ASEAN countries, to help to disseminate knowledge related to their ongoing projects. So this is also a place where you could help to communicate your work, so spotlight the work that you're doing, and there'll be a series of workshops, events like that that'll be organised, which you're welcome to attend and speak at if that's of relevance to you. So that's everything from me. Thank you very much for your attention, and if you've got any questions, please go ahead.